All right, we are live here, Craig. So first of all, thank you for doing this. I will say, anyone who doesn't know who you are Craig Wright. You're now banned from Twitter. That's what we were just talking about. So I wanted to get this going so we can talk about this a little bit further. But maybe if you could just walk us through the timeline of what happened here.
Basically, what I sought to do was to get Twitter to start banning bots. Now, there are a number of them, including the guy who wrote Dogecoin and other scammy things like that, that have been intentionally bypassing the privacy controls in Twitter. Privacy allows you to block people, and it allows you to also go private. Now, that is an important right. There are privacy controls in the EU. There is privacy legislation in the EU, and in the EU, privacy is considered a fundamental human right that is sacrosanct. Breaching it is a criminal offense. It's rather bad over here. Now, the interesting thing is Twitter's not American. Twitter may have offices and developers over there, but for tax reasons, they form themselves in Ireland. That makes them part of the EU, and they are covered by all of those provisions in full. Now, the interesting thing in all of this is I have a right to privacy. Like that or not. The irony in all these people saying that they want anonymous coins for more privacy is they're hypocrites, utterly in hypocrisy. They want power. They use this to say, we're doing it for more freedom. There is no freedom or expression in anonymity. There is only freedom in pseudonymy, privacy. And you don't get privacy by bypassing it. These security controls are there to allow people to be comfortable, to have trust, to believe that they can have relationships with other people without secrets being shared, without their information being broadcast. That is what privacy is about. And you shouldn't have to go out there and expect to have special groups and filter everyone. The truth of privacy is if you set it and someone violates it, they have committed a crime. It's the same as saying you didn't have sort of barred windows and a bank shield when you sell things in a 7-Eleven, so why did you get robbed? The victim is not the person responsible. The criminal is. And these people are criminals. And Twitter are supporting criminals. My account was suspended because I complained about the criminal acts that Twitter are supporting. They are taking money from the XRP army. They're taking money from Blockstream and others to promote accounts and lie. And they are doing this so that they can pump coins and get paid from it. That is a crime. They are breaching people's human rights to aid criminals.
So you started to mention this, but how does Twitter behave differently than other social media companies like Google or like what are the differences between some of these other companies that are also accused of censoring and all that kind of stuff?
That's fine. Censoring is good because it's not government. You have a right to kick people out of your home. You have a right to stop people. This is the lie. You have a right to choose who you speak to. There is no freedom of listening. No one has the ability, the right to come into my home and tell me what they think. No one has the right to shout me down in my property. No one has the right to infringe my freedom to be in a group that I want to be in and exclude them. They don't have a right to come here. The freedom of speech is that they can stand over the other side of the room where I can't hear them, and they own that space, and jump up and down and yell as nobody listens to them. That's what it's about. They have the freedom to write, but not to make someone put their article out.
Right.
They have the freedom to choose to be private or not. They don't have the freedom to be anonymous, contrary to what people think. Pseudonymous, yes, because you are liable for what you say. If you libel or slander people, that is covered. freedom of speech doesn't give you carte blanche to say anything. It doesn't give you the truth to crush. It doesn't allow you to lie. It doesn't allow you to cheat. It doesn't allow you to make things up without evidence. If you have something and it's real, you go to court.
Right.
But these people don't want court because that's the lie they want to promote. This coders law thing is lies and fraud and criminals. That's all it is. And that's what these people are supporting, because they can get rich milking and attacking and taking from those who are too weak to defend themselves. But here's the thing, I'm not. And I am a lawyer, and I am doing my PhD or doctorate of law at the moment, and I do have a master's of law, and we do have many, many law firms on our books. And some people are going to discover just how painful this is. When I promise things, everyone has instant gratification now. I don't. My timeline for short term, that most people consider a minute or an hour, for me is a 5-year period. I plan and plot decades.
So
now,
yeah,
so
go ahead.
I'm going to say, but now this year, things are at that point. So thank you guys for basically making sure that everything's fresh and cogent as I bankrupt you one by one.
Sure. I think what's interesting is I've noticed, especially in the conversations we've had with you, maybe months later, the things you're talking about do become relevant. So lastly, on that point, I did notice when Jack Dorsey, he kind of was doing the PR rounds recently, I did find interesting, he kept repeating that code is law thing, like over and over and over again, that he actually does believe that that code can be law. And
he's a socialist and he supports criminals. He makes money taking money from criminals. These people who pump things without a securities and equities or a derivatives license are criminals. He is a supporter of criminals. And here's the difference. Defamation allows truth. When they call me a fraud, I haven't done a fraud. So when I take them into court, they're going to learn what that freaking means.
sure.
I have to go in court now and start actually saying things. There's no reason for me to hide anymore. And people are going to realize just how painful that can be.
So we'll get to that. Maybe I wanted to broaden this topic a little bit before we even dive into Bitcoin. I mean, the first thing I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about is, so we're about 10 years, or a little over 10 years, I guess, from the Genesis block, where the timestamped article references clearly some kind of disdain for nationalization of banks and bad economic policy. And I guess my question to you is generally, what are your thoughts on like today's, remove Bitcoin from your mind, today's global economic affairs, right? So do you think that it seems like we were probably decades from kicking the can down the road of borrowing money, of printing money? Are we on the verge of some kind of economic downturn
we have cycles. I mean, no, the world's not going to collapse. It's not close to collapse. There's none of that stuff. This whole anti-Wall Street and whatever bullshit. I mean, Main Street is what is actually commerce, but without finance, we don't get anywhere either. The problem is there's too many ignorant people have no idea what they're even railing about, and they let themselves be taken over by those who seek power from them. And that's where these people running these bots actually act. They get idiots who give them power. And that's the strength of socialism. It's taking fools and taking their power, letting them believe in an illusion. That's what actually is there. You're anonymous, but you're not. They own you. They control you.
Well, so this actually leads to next. Something that you keep bringing up that doesn't seem to be taken too seriously, but when you look into it, it's clear as cut, clear as day as to what the requirements are, like for FinCEN, for keeping records. And you've mentioned 8,000 times probably that any anonymous currency, or even Lightning, which I think this plays into it perfectly.
Lightning could be legal if it kept all records.
Okay.
The interesting thing is the records would be larger than an on-block transaction, and every single node will have to keep those. So what you're actually talking about is a system that requires 10 times the amount of storage as Bitcoin on the blockchain.
Sounds efficient. Yeah.
I can't run that. There are two arguments. I mean, Jack over with Twitter, of course, has investment in Square, and Square is legal, and it could run nodes. Other ones will get kicked off, leaving people like Square. So he has an agenda, which under law you have to actually state, but he's failed to do that as he promotes certain things, which is also illegal. So these people who sit there going, code is law, basically is, don't look at my crime.
Right. And in the case of anonymous currency, I fail to see how any of it could ever work. I know we've talked about this 8,000 times, but
it can for drugs.
Sure.
In small quantities. But the reality is, even then it doesn't work, because nobody wants something they can't exchange. These people are too stupid. They don't even understand the drug industry. Nobody wants a cash that can be easily taken. Now, the way that you stop things like child porn is you say mere possession is a crime. Mere possession of certain anonymous instruments are already a crime. This is the problem at the moment. It's not whether things are illegal or not. It's the lies that are being told to the regulators. If we take the Ethereum submission, they went in there saying how all nodes are equal. It's decentralized because nodes set policy.
Right.
Bullshit. 2 nodes, a node including the entire, and I mean every single miner associated with a pool, makes 1 node. 2 nodes control 53% of Ethereum. 3 people control the code. The important aspect of decentralized in this is power. The bit no one wants to talk about is it's the decentralization of power. If you can change the protocol, if a group of developers, like the less than 8 in Bitcoin Core, can alter the protocol, that's what centralization is about. That then is a company. We have the Unregistered Companies Act here in the UK. Very simple. How do you know it's a company? Who cares? If it's registered or not. The difference is if you're registered, you're protected by limited liability. If it's not,
Yeah. And what about, so again, we've talked about this before, but I like to kind of hear this progression of logic here. You've mentioned before that fungibility is a product of law, not technology. Could you maybe expand upon that just for people who don't understand that? And specifically, how can you, no matter what you do technologically, what is law required to make something fungible?
So basically the way that currency, money, etc. works and why fungibility exists is when you have a valid exchange without knowledge, one done without any knowledge of receipt of drug money or illicit money or anything like that. So without knowledge and for good consideration, then that's it. Miller versus Race, back in the 18th century, is still good law. So what that means is if you receive something and there's no reason to suspect that it was drug money or money laundering was involved or anything like that, then very simply, it's clean. So if someone walks into your 7-Eleven and pays you in Bitcoin and you have no way to know that that is bad Bitcoin, then you're fine. So years and years ago, back in the 80s, I worked in some restaurants back when I was a cook. And at times, I manned the front counter, and what people didn't know is we did some checks in the background. And this is the old days before everything was computerized, because I'm old. And we had books from Visa and MasterCard that would give us bad credit cards. Not like you could swipe it and know, but you had to do the swipe machine. So you would quickly check if there were reported numbers. And sometimes when the chefs weren't busy, we would do that, and the girls and others serving, and yes, it was all girls, so I'll say that, would hand it off to us. And we even had notes that we checked, like if there was a 20 or 50, occasionally there'd be known counterfeit things or thefts and everything like that, and we'd even check serial numbers. If we had that in our book and we accepted it, it's not fungible. That simple. If we were able to know about it, it's not fungible, even though it's cash. We could have it taken from us. If the police came in and said, we just noticed that you've taken money from a known drug dealer, and we'd go, oh, but it's not in the book, ours. If they went, actually, it's in the book there, you missed it, the police could actually confiscate it. That's what fungibility is. That's how it works. That works with cash. So now they're making it more complex by building in RFID tags into newer plastic notes and things like this. Not that many people seem to understand that, which will actually make some of the scanning easier for people. Under small amounts, no one cares, but yeah. Now, on top of that, this is where cryptocurrency is interesting. If you get a gift, it's not without knowledge for consideration. So if someone gives you 100 Bitcoin, the police can come in and take it. If it's validly gifted to you, fine. But if I say committed a crime, I was on Silk Road, and my name is Ross, and I've got a whole lot of money, and I gift someone 100 Bitcoin, that is still proceeds of crime and can be taken. Whereas if Ross walked into a 7-Eleven and they took Bitcoin, then the police can't take it from the 7-Eleven. See the difference here?
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's fungibility. One of the key aspects of law, and if I grab books that I've got, so the fun of studying law and whatever else, so I've got this one of definite reading. Anyone who wants to understand money needs to read this. This is the book on money, okay? Man on the legal aspect of money. And another good one by David Fox is Property Rights on Money.
All right.
We have this aspect of what is money, title, promissory risk, etc. And if we look up tracing, tracing, and by the way, incorporeal money is not new. It goes back a long way. Your bank account is incorporeal money. In the 90s, when we had eCash, that was virtual currency. So this isn't new. The exchange, the banking, the whatever else stuff is not something that a blockchain does. Blockchain does the settlement and clearing.
Right.
And there's no regulations or laws against settlement and clearing. That's actually private law. So where people are going wrong is they actually think we need new law. So we have a system that replaces the settlement, the BSI. That's why they hate Bitcoin so much, because it replaces them. It replaces some of the central bank functions, but it doesn't replace bank functions. It doesn't replace payment systems. It doesn't do any of that stuff. It doesn't replace exchanges. They are covered in law. And there's no such thing as a DEX. A DEX is a lie. It is a pure fraud. Anyone telling you that they have a DEX, distributed exchange, is a fraud.
Why is that?
because there is no distributed exchange. Think about it for a minute. If you set up a MySQL database over 10 servers, you still run those servers.
Right.
A company running a DEX, who cares? They're a company. The argument is the same for Apple. Apple have over 1 million shareholders. 1 million people vote. It's decentralized. It's more decentralized than Bitcoin. It's more decentralized than every cryptocurrency combined. Yay, Apple. Understand how decentralized works now.
Right.
Google is 100 times every single cryptocurrency. And I guarantee this, every combined cryptocurrency is 1% of the decentralization of Google. So tracing. Da-da-da.
Oh, you look it up there.
Yep. Substituted assets, blah, 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 claims, etc. Da-da-da. So we have larceny cases such as Russell and Smith, 1955, Queen's Bank, Bench 27. If we take that, other things, R versus POSC, 1973. And basically, there's a difference in equity and whatever else. But if you read these two books, what you'll quickly come to understand, especially in some of the earlier areas like English law, understanding of bank accounts and other things, transfer, tender, and payment of money, including my scribbled notes. I scribble on my books, sorry.
Right.
I don't care whether people like it or not. One day people will probably have a copy of my library and take scribbles on it. And so I do things like payment channel lightning against paragraphs that say these, and counterclaims and offsets and exact areas that are there. But one of the fundamental legal definition of money is it is traceable. Now, that is important. If someone steals your money, you may not get the note back. It can be fungible, but you have a debt. Even if you don't have the debt on the original note because someone's got rid of it. If you steal my money, I own that money until you spend it with good consideration. Then it is mixed.
Sure.
So mixing is actually considered in law already. So when people talk about mixes and things like this, they're actually not a new concept. Mixing is an old concept in the law of tracing. Going back to what we were saying, if the police pull you up and I happen to have a photograph of my £20 note, and here's the serial number, and I've got evidence that you mugged me, that's my £20 note. The police will probably take it as evidence and eventually I'll get it, but it's my £20 note. In equity, if you've used that £20 note and no longer have it, then the £10 note you have change, I can't get back.
Right.
But what I have in equity is the right, the equitable right to sue you for £20.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you've only got £10, I'll take that £10 note, and then you can go bankrupt for £10.
For other else, yeah. What about payment channels, right? So, well, I guess I'll preface.
So here's the difference between payment channels, the way they were designed, and the way they are with Lightning.
Right.
If I'm doing a Lightning channel, what we're talking about is a multiple hop thing, where you issue promissory notes.
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm going to pay you via that guy over there, I'm not dealing with you directly. I have a promise in a smart contract between you and them. Very simple. That's called a promissory note. And they might go, oh, but if blah, blah, blah happens, it's secure. That's why you need watchtowers.
Right.
And 24/7 availability. and people to do fraud checks, do you start to see this is no different to what we have now? We can do fraud checks on Visa.
Right.
We can call up the Visa company and go, is this okay? Yay. And like my stupid card does all the time, I can get, oh, you're in Turkey spending money, or oh, you're in Bolivia spending money, or oh, you're somewhere, because I travel a lot. And even though I've contacted the bank and said I'll be traveling, they still go, oh, we noticed that you're in a different country than you were yesterday. Duh. That's what travel does.
Right.
And they then send me a text saying, did you make this thing? And I have to go, yes. Usually waiting 10 minutes at the restaurant or whatever else so that my credit card can actually go through. That happens now.
Yeah.
That's a watchtower. None of this is particularly new. So going back to where I was saying about Ethereum and decentralization, the lie is that nodes matter. They tell people how it's decentralized because anyone can vote on the system. But the truth is, it's a power thing. And if you can change the protocol, it's not decentralized.
Yeah.
It's decentralized if miners split off and do something new, an airdrop coin. That's the thing. Miners can choose to orphan. So the 1 meg limit was not a protocol change. Why? Because a miner can always decide to block that, but no user is impacted. Say I'm a miner and I start blocking 300K and above blocks. That doesn't impact you,
Right.
the user. You don't need to change your software. If you're running SPV, everything's fine. If you're running SPV and you get a transaction, there are two things you need to do. You can validate the transaction, not everyone's, the one you're receiving. The rules have not changed. No rule changes, ever.
Yeah.
You get that transaction, it links to something in a UTXO, it's in the block header, the Merkle path all works. Yippee, I've been paid. Now, the miner chooses. That's what they choose. They don't get to say, oh, well, I'm going to add a new opcode. That's a protocol change because then you have to also change your software. And they'll go, oh, but you need to change software. But here's the thing. If I install Windows and then give you a new disk and go, oh, to continue running Windows, you have to put this Linux disk in and do the install, that's not actually the same protocol anymore. That's the lie. Okay. You might want people to upgrade because of security vulnerabilities and things like that. But if they can't run their old transactions, it's a protocol change. This is important because remember nlock time and all those things? Imagine I gave a transaction that next year is valid. If anything happens to me, my family can spend next year. It's not on chain. It's saved. That's private. CLTV is not private. The world knows. But my nlock time transaction that I've given to them is. The argument they made is that what if I lose that transaction? Which is stupid. It is designed to lie to people. Because if I lose that transaction, I've likely lost my wallet.
Right.
If I've lost my wallet, who cares if I've got the transaction because I've lost my keys? So that's it. You keep it all together, you lose one, you lose it all. There's no argument here. You can't say, oh, but if you lose part of it. Bullshit. So if I have a real estate transaction, it will need legally to be valid 70, 80 years.
Right.
So there's no alteration of protocol and using blockchain for that, because as soon as you have an altered protocol, you kill off transactions. You can't do that legally.
Yeah. Circling back a second, you had an article that was fantastic. Ryan Charles made a video about the article that I thought also was very helpful for anyone to understand. But there's a weird irony that so you described how to build payment channels and how to use IPv6 to pretty much have Netflix over the blockchain, right? But the probably most ironic part about it is that Core and others have been stripping away malleability for the purpose of building payment channels.
No, for the purpose of building Lightning off-chain channels. Payment channels, no. Payment channels are you and I. That's a payment channel. Not you and I and Bob and Jack and Charles and Frank and 100 links.
Right.
A payment channel is you and I negotiate. That's peer-to-peer. Okay. As soon as it's peer to Jim and Jack and Frank and John and Bank over there and Square, to you, it's not peer-to-peer. Do we see the difference here? Payment channels are peer-to-peer. You and I send directly. There's no middleman. Can we see the 1984 sort of double speak here? You're peer-to-peer by sending through these middlemen. You're peer-to-peer because you've got a trusted third party. You're peer-to-peer because watchtowers protect you.
It's innovative. Yeah.
War is peace. We were always at war with Blockstream Eurasia.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, all right. So you've had 8,000 Medium articles. I try to take my favorite ones to ask you about, but they're all really good.
Not 8,000 yet. There's only about 300.
You got more work to go then.
I'm working on it.
You had one called Profiting from Privacy.
Yes.
I thought it was fantastic, but maybe if you could just summarize to Jack Dorsey, to Mark Zuckerberg, to all the other CEOs of social media companies, how can they profit from privacy?
Okay. Bitcoin allows us to do micropayments. That allows us to have a system that doesn't need a shit show advertising model. Imagine every single transaction pays your site. You have an indexing service sitting on an immutable blockchain. In the petabytes of data Facebook has, no one will ever find the encrypted shit show of what you're not having indexed. You need services on top of it to index and find and collate. And you charge people for it. And the great thing with Bitcoin, as Money Button already allows you to do, is I don't need to have pay direct to you, but my wallet app can take a small payment. This shouldn't be free. Free costs money. Free is an insidious socialist lie. It's not free. Every sign up on a user account is worth $18 US. Full PII is worth several $100s. They take that, they sell it. They sell your data. They sell it to ads. They sell it to government. They sell it to companies. They sell your freedom. That's what they're doing. Rather, what we should be doing is selling each individual access. Imagine you have the cost of getting thousands of ad views out to people and selling all of your information to get a click worth a fraction of a cent.
Right.
You have to do thousands of times what you could charge for Bitcoin to make a profit. You take 1/10 of a cent every day from people and you multiply that. You take a little bit here and a little bit there and you start adding that up and it becomes important. You have billions of people on Facebook. Imagine what 1 cent a day from all of those subscribers would do.
Yeah.
1 cent. That would be $3.65 a year from billions of people. You could do differential pricing, make Africa cheaper, have us rich bastards pay 2 cents and Africa pay 0.1.
Yeah.
all sorts of wonderful things you can do to open up the world. And yet, do they? No, we have an advertising model. Imagine controlling and owning your own intellectual property, controlling your own rights, being private, having people access it so that you can trust again. Social media destroys trust. We're not supposed to have a trust-free system. This is the lie these assholes want you to believe, because they're anonymous. They don't want trust. They want crime. They want to attack people. They want to degrade. They want to see things burn for the sake of burning. We want a system we can trust. We want to know that if we go into a room, there's no one hiding in the corner. That when we have a virtual room, no one's copying our communications.
So I mentioned this when we were in London, but with a spark that hit me is that it seems like we've already gotten kind of used to this idea of big data, right? Like, you know, I have an Alexa in my home, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like what you're talking about really is taking this thing that I kind of accepted as this dystopian, like Black Mirror, this is what's going to happen, but now an alternative path that actually allows privacy. It allows,
Mm-hmm.
in a better way, it allows capitalism too, which
Yep.
is probably even more important. Well, all right. I have 80,000 other things to talk to you about, but we're going to try and move along here. You mentioned, I'll ask you this question, because you mentioned end-lock time. You hinted at the Foundation series in one of your presentations. I think the one in London. I guess my question for you is: Are you Hari Seldon? Do you have a master plan?
Yes, but I'm probably more than just him. The wonderful thing about cryptography, it breaks. We lose 1 bit every 18 months. Privacy shouldn't be forever.
Interesting.
Imagine if you can hide things while you're alive, but know that in 150 years, researchers, if you're famous or whatever else, can dive through and find out what the truth is. So you can do everything while you're alive, but the truth always comes out in time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm reminded of another story, but anyway. Okay. All right.
So that's an important aspect that people don't think about.
Yeah.
Crypto always breaks.
Do you think that we're, what are the implications to having a Library of Alexandria that doesn't get burnt down, right? I mean,
if we think about what's just happened, and years worth of songs, one or two actually probably good, on MySpace have just been lost.
right.
What if that could never happen? Imagine that you could never lose anymore, that you could save applications to access things on the metanet, allowing someone 100 years from now to download the equivalent of a digital video recorder and find that VCR and load the files and watch something for the sake of it. And some of us still like to go back occasionally. I've watched Metropolis and early stupid films. My wife hates them and tells me that's old and it's tacky and whatever else. But some of my favorite films are old and tacky. I mean, probably my favorite film is actually Casablanca. Harry Bogart and overacted, and they wear too much makeup, and I love it. It is my favorite film. Yes, I like the Matrix series and whatever else. It was interesting, but it wasn't actually as original as people made out. If you've actually read Neil Stephenson and everything, and Philip Dick and others, but yeah, I actually love some of these old films like Casablanca, not the redone terrible colorized version either. I love Harry, what do you call him? Chaplin and whatever else. It's a wonderful story. The one, it's silent, where he is the dictator. It's magnificent. People should watch that. It is so telling of many things. It was before Hitler. Well, Hitler was actually there, but not before World War II. It is an amazing, amazing sort of story.
So, well, I get your point, right? I think there's definitely a benefit to having all that information not lost. Which I guess leads us into the idea of MetaNet. You announced MetaNet in November, but you said it was a old project that you started in 2000. You filed in 2001, 2002, 2003, somewhere.
Yep.
But I guess my question for you is, because I've been trying to figure this out, you said you finished it last year. So
yes. Oh, I haven't. I mean, it'll never be finished.
Sure.
But figured out how to get it working properly.
Okay. So what was the progression of accomplishments, I guess, getting from 2001 to where we are today?
Decentralization, not in the way that people talk about, but having distributed systems was incredibly important. Having monetary value, working for an accounting firm for a time. Alan Granger, in about 2006, introduced me to triple entry ledgers while I was working on developing CAT software. That's computer-aided audit techniques. And that was fundamental. I mean, I hadn't really thought about some of those things with keeping the ledger against the signed entry and things like this. And interestingly enough, as soon as I saw that, I came up, it just sort of set off sort of bells in my head. I was working on a number of fraud cases, auditing public companies and looking, well, basically there had been non-material frauds, but they all added up together to be material, which is materiality limit you have to report and things like that. And I created a number of audit tools that would go through and search and find anomalies using things like Benford's law. People are terrible. They really don't understand how numbers are distributed in the real world. And they screw that up all the time. They think they'll do it randomly or pick numbers, and yeah, it's easy to actually find where people have tried to defraud things. And you would take the natural distribution based on the way that the company would price things, sell things, etc., and find where people have tried to alter that. And I mean, it's like true random was something that was introduced in Apple and the iPlayer, and people hated it because every now and again the same song would play twice. And people go, it can't be random. You just pull out the same song twice. Well, that's what random does. This is why people screw up when they're trying to defraud things. They pull out the same numbers. So that really clicked for me. As I was thinking about how people got away with a lot of the frauds in public companies and things, they need to have multiple sets of books. Madoff, Enron, Barings Bank, all these frauds require people have something they monitor so that they can know what they're doing against something that is there. And this is why you can't have multiple blockchains. Even on one blockchain, you have to have registered identities. There can't be anonymity because that allows fraud. To stop fraud, you can have pseudonymy. Like our number 42 derivative key system allows you to have a certified master key that is offline and no one can tell apart from where you register it, that later you can prove all of the hierarchy. So there's only one possible hierarchy. And if you ever cheat, people know you've cheated. So if you get it, the audit would be, can you show me everything in order? And you don't delete things. You have to reverse. which is how public companies have to actually do their accounting right now, IFRS rules, etc. Meaning that you have one immutable set of truth. There's no cheating, no lies, no anything else. There's no, I get to go back and try and falsify records. No, I'm monitoring here but doing that there with Enron. One ledger. This is really what Bitcoin allows. The first time in human history, a set of books that can't be altered or can't be run against each other in parallel. The old scam of two sets of books. Bitcoin stops that. This is what they're trying to take away. They don't want a truth machine. They don't want this. They're saying, oh, privacy. They don't want privacy. They want lies. They want to delete records. They want to delete evidence. They want to act outside the law. They want that for crime and scams.
And maybe as a good jumping off point, we did some investigation, I guess you could say, and found that you had your own kind of dispute with the Australian tax office where potentially an immutable ledger would have been beneficial to yourself. Obviously, I guess maybe could you just detail as much as you can the struggles that you've had, or I guess you did have in Australia, even prior to 2013, I guess.
Well, it goes back to 2009, where I actually made claims that got rejected. So what I wanted to do was actually bring intellectual property that I had outside of companies into the companies. And I tried to do it by the letter of the law, where I actually sold from myself to the company. And I put GST on it, but I also claimed GST. And that should offset each other. Basically, it should be, I get money here, I pay money back there, all equal. And I told them I don't even need to receive the money. Basically, just do an offset. Oh, but we can't do that. Fine, then put it into account. I mean, no way I can do anything to steal anything. And then they said, yes, but it's allowable here, but not there. And I said, you can't do that, because if you take it off one, then it doesn't happen validly on the other. So then, of course, they had me update records, and I reissued it based on what they told me. And then people run around going, you reissued record. People reissue invoices all the time. It's a company. Or you issue them at the end of the month. So one example people argue with is, you issued a invoice for the 17th on the 30th. Welcome to business. You have a run, and the actual date of when you did the work as a consultant was on the 17th. You put the bill down on the 17th and you send it on the 30th. So bloody what?
Right.
That's actually legal. It is perfectly legal. That is how 99% of businesses work. Or sometimes you even issue things in advance. Why? Because you get asked to. I've done that before. People have asked me, can you issue this? We need to do a pay run now. We need to do a whatever before our month cutoff. Can you issue me next month's thing now to be paid? What am I going to do? Fuck you. I don't want to get paid for another 60 days. That's right. The reality. I mean, this is how business actually works. None of these mumpties have actually run a business or anything, and they think this is cheating or anything. It's not. You put it down in your thing, and you have a set of books.
Sure.
So what happened then was I went through a whole lot of things where the tax office called me reckless and et cetera, et cetera. We spent years in jail fighting $110,000. Not jail. Bloody. Thinking about the guy who should be in there. Spent years in my Freudian over the tax office guy who was, should have been. But we spent years fighting this shit. Went to court. I spent $1.3 million to win, which I eventually did. and actually found out that I'd underclaimed. I didn't claim enough. And literally, I had someone in the tax office then argue with me and threaten that I was reckless for underclaiming. Luckily, I had people in the tax office who had a brain step in and say, there is no way on earth you can take someone to court for recklessly underclaiming. I mean, as a policy issue, they pointed out that if you start taking people to court for not paying enough tax, then everyone's going to have an excuse to try and basically argue that I was just acting within the law, trying to maximize my return. I mean, if you think about it, that was a stupid thing to do.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, you didn't claim enough because you missed out putting this invoice in. Imagine what then happens. Every single thing people have will then be invoiced and the government revenue goes down. So
Perfect. Yeah. I'm going to jump around again. I think we're getting close to time here. I don't want to keep you over an hour, but I guess maybe the last question I'll just ask you, because it's really broad and maybe envision something different where, Ethereum has sold the world on this, or maybe they at one point in time sold the world on the world computer, right?
Ethereum have sold the world in a lie, but they haven't sold the world yet.
Sure. What about this concept of being able to call different transactions inside of the blockchain, where you can essentially build programs? Like, do you view Bitcoin as being able to accomplish
of course. But the difference is every single machine shouldn't run every single thing. This is why in the Turing complete process that I've documented or started to, that you have payment channels, that you call different functions, that you run them and settle different places. That's how you do sharding. So already solved, sorry. And after you guys tried to make fun of me, the first thing I did before releasing the papers, which are all being published this year, is I patented it. So F you. Now, the simple bit here is you don't want everyone running everything. Because if you have every Raspberry Pi in the world having to validate everything, then the smallest computer becomes the bottleneck.
Right.
Effectively, we may as well chuck every other computer away and only run that one little Raspberry Pi for everyone, because it's the one we have to wait for. That's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I'll let you run here. I think we're close to time, so I appreciate you doing this. I anticipate you'll be in Toronto in May. Yeah.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
I'm speaking, so I better be.
I think you're a featured event. Yeah. So great. All right. Well, thanks again, Craig.
You're welcome.
Good luck with Twitter. Hope you win that one.
Oh, we will, one way or another.
Very good. All right. Have a good one.
You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye.